Thank you,
Hey,
sir.
Bert, how you doing?
Pretty good,
I like your face. Look, it's on TV.
It is. So, how is it that narcissists have such profound power over people? It's absolutely simple. What it is that these notions that we harbor within our mind that define us are experienced as contextual phenomenon. An example would be somebody that believes that they're not good enough is also somebody that believes they are good enough. That what makes these notions hard to distinguish is that they're not permanent in the sense that we don't always feel like we're not good enough. We don't always feel like we're broken. We don't always experience that there's something wrong with us. But these phenomenon, they are part of the way that we defined ourselves as children, setting in motion an experience of life where people are attempting to overcome themselves perpetually, attempting to prove to themselves that they're healed or they're good enough, or fix themselves or fix life as a way to find happiness, find love. And these notions come from childhood. But rather than looking at childhood in the view of an environment, because you most certainly had an environment, the truth of the matter is that there's the genesis of identity or personality that's actually comes from singular moments where the child transitions from merely just being in the world. Like when you look at animals, they're just being in the world. For themselves, they see things, they engage those things, they have pain. They're aware physically of their selves, but you see, they don't exist for themselves within their mind. That animals don't define themselves. And so that's what makes human beings unique, but it only exists in human beings that have language. That it's the terms that we use to describe ourselves that give us distinction. You see, language is an important phenomenon in the transformation of human beings. That when we created language, we created words to describe the world, and it enabled us to communicate and share ideas. That I could think of things and then I could create words to describe those and cause you to think of things. We could have, the ability to communicate in very profound ways, right? But this system, it also created a bit of a problem, because what happens is that we objectify ourselves. And by objectifying ourselves, what I mean is quite literally when the child experiences their first experiential failure. And when I say experiential failure, there's a moment where being a happy-go-lucky child and running around and just engaging life, is going to hit a wall. You're going to do something wrong. You're going to do something that gets disapproval. You're going to do something that causes you to feel like you failed in some way, that the way that you were being was not enough. It wasn't going to work for you to just be, untrained to reality. And in these moments become the genesis of identity, becomes the basis of the structure of personality, a psychological phenomenon that exists in the mind of all people. Well, all people except for narcissists. And these moments consist of a perceived failure, like something being wrong, you got in trouble. You're confused because an adult might be yelling at you or might be upset. And so your mind has to become trained on the moment. It's like a fight or flight reaction. Your senses get trained to the moment. as confusion sets in, as you try to recognize exactly what's going on, and this becomes pattern recognition. The personality structure of a human being is a hybridization of an animal fight or flight reaction coupled with phrases, coupled with the emotions of that moment that get imprinted and connected to these words. That you see, people think that they feel not good enough, but they don't feel not good enough. They exist as not good enough, and existing as not good enough feels a certain way, and for each person that would be unique. Why would it be unique? Is because it's a recreation of the very emotional experiences that existed in the very moment in which the child determined that they were not good enough as an explanation for what happened. You see, something happened, and that something happened is just what happened. It's a description. But you see, human beings don't live in a world of just something happened, like an arbitrary assertion of events. It doesn't just happen. It means something about us. It means something. There's always meaning that gets added. And so we live in stories. Like if you listen to someone talk about their past, it's going to be an enmeshment of an observable physical reality and imbued with significance, context, and personal meaning. And so to the child, what happened was, I wasn't good enough, and this happened. The because I'm not good enough becomes integrated into what happened. So this is the lesson, is that there is a distinction between what happened and what the child made it mean about themselves. That if you took somebody into their mind and you reintegrated them or introduced them again to being able to experience life outside the analysis, what you would find is an interesting reality. That they keep having the same emotional experiences repeated and the same behavioral responses to those experiences and the same fear of having those experiences happen and the behaviors that they invented to mitigate the perceived failures of their life. That the personality is a compensatory mechanism. It is a defense mechanism, a fight or flight mechanism that inspires and compels people to behave a certain way in avoidance of pain and in the seeking of happier emotions. Like your happiness is a reward of being good enough. You're stressed about a test, you study because of your fear of failure, you get a grade, you look at your grade defines you. You will feel good enough if you got an A, you will feel not good enough if you got a C, and if you got an F, you are going to be fully triggered. And that becomes the basis of reality. That they live in a perpetual world that is determined by how they experience their world as a child. That, in a sense, if they experience feeling not good enough in a moment in which their parent was involved, that will then become the relationship to dad or mom, that they will perpetually seek the approval of the parent as to satiate their need to feel good enough, because they live with the generalized sense of being not good enough or at least threatened by it. And so now people live out adult lives attending to structure life, trying to protect themselves from feeling not good enough. That will define their career aspirations, their goals, their education. They want to build a life that immunizes them from the devaluation of others, from the judgment. Or they can look at their results and say, I'm good enough, I'm good enough, I'm good enough. Just to stabilize themselves emotionally from the yo-yo of a world that tells them they're good enough or not. The little voice in your head becomes your interpreter. There's a reason why people become present through meditation. Being present in life, all it is the absence of the voice. That's it. Because the voice is the voice of meaning. The voice is what dictates to you what this means about you. That rather than just seeing spilled milk and cleaning it up, you have to make the spilled milk mean something about you or someone else. Somebody was not good enough. Somebody did this. This means that. Your grade means something about you. Your FICO score means something about you. And rather than just dealing with what's so in life, you deal with the meaning. That you're never impacted by what happened. You're only impacted by what the meaning of what happened is to you. And so when you listen to people talk, you are listening to the voice tell you what that means to you. It may mean nothing about you, but you're trained to listen. That your whole reality becomes a fight or flight pattern recognition where you have imperiled yourself with the meaning that you have assigned to yourself, that your imagination is contaminated with profound boundaries that have to do with the way in which you defined yourself within yourself. That the thought that you're not good enough, backed by the evidence of your past, becomes a limitation on what you think that you're capable of. It'll make you a preparation junkie. It will make you blow an opportunity. It'll make you interpreting the mannerisms, the tone of voice, to try to ascertain whether you're good enough to them or not, whether you're going to get the job or not, whether the girl likes you or not. And so you imbue so much significance and meaning on the living of your life that you live in perpetual fear of a world that imagined to be bigger than you, where that stage was set in early childhood and repeated. And you have several of these defining moments, as well as other smaller vicious circles. Notions of being unwanted, notions of being unlovable, notions of being broken, notions that there's something wrong with you. And the ruminating voice seeks to fix itself. That you will be thinking something is wrong with you, having the emotions, failing to recognize the something wrong with you is the something itself. That the thought connected with the profound and powerful emotions are what is defining your current experience, compelling you to go and do something about it. And without the lens of psychology expanding to include the world of ontology, we have not yet conventionally acquired an understanding of the mind that would alleviate the suffering of people through recognizing the profound power of the human mind in inventing its own experience of self and the world through which the self experiences existing, a world that necessitates the self existing as these compensatory, mechanical ways of reacting to life. That you don't have much choice in a world that's dictated to you, in a world that occurs to you to be real. That the gift of the human mind was this immense platform, the ability to generate an entire world within your mind. Like right now, if I ask you, you can imagine the earth, can you not? You can hold the earth in your imagination. And I could tell you to zoom in on Texas, and I could say zoom in on Dallas and imagine the buildings. I could say look at your house from above, and you could just be in your imagination seeing it. And I could tell you to imagine driving from Dallas to California, and you can see that. And you could see yourself getting in a car. Oh. The observer is the creator. You're very right. You know that I am moving here to see if I can get better reception. I think that I was disconnecting. And so the world that we experience living within is split between an inner world and an outer world. That when the human being said for the first time that there's something wrong with me, I'm broken, or I'm not good enough, this became the profound boundaries of a defined being that you would hold within your mind, that you would relate to the world outside of yourself through. That you took the infinity of all the ways that a person can be and act, and all the ways a person can think, all the possibilities to take action, became condensed, became limited to the interpreted view of the potential of this individual. And now you need evidence. Your confidence becomes based on your past results or lack thereof. That you accumulate experiences in support of being good enough and being not good enough that continue to ongoingly cement you in the reality of this particular way of seeing the world and seeing yourself. That when the child said, I'm not good enough, in that moment, all the emotions of that moment became attached to and attributed to being not good enough. That being not good enough explained the failure, it explained the pain, it explained the suffering. That this would not have happened if I was good enough became the thought of the child. And the mind then pattern recognized the circumstances. And moving forward, the child would continue to scan the landscape of life, looking in avoidance of things that would make them experience themselves as potentially not good enough, needing to plan, needing to prepare or avoid or confront. And that's the basis of fear. You fear failing because you fear the emotions that come along with being a failure. But what would happen if you didn't fear failure? If failure no longer meant anything about you or to you? If you could have a goal and you just play the game and you go for it. And then something doesn't go your way, and then you learn. You look at it and you go, okay, well then you try it again. And you try it again. You could just look at life like a big slot machine. You see, if you were dating and rather than worrying about whether someone thinks you're good enough and becoming attached to them because they do and it makes you feel good, you just trained yourself to be attentive to who they are. Less interested in what they think of you, more interested in what you can see about them. And then when they start acting weird, you go, oh, okay, well that doesn't work, goodbye. You could have integrity to what it was that you wanted. Like that doesn't work for you, and so you find what does. But not in a world where you feel incomplete, not in a world where you imagine you need to accomplish things in order to experience yourself as good enough or healed or not broken. So in a very real sense, human beings took themselves from being in the world, being present, through the definitions of self that they invented to explain the sufferings in singular moments in their past. And since they did that, they have been on an existential search for themselves, seeing themselves outside of themselves through their accomplishments, through their material possessions, through their relationships, through the thoughts, feelings, opinions of others, their family, their significant other, their relationships, society, continuing to adopt meaning and definitions like, this is what I'm supposed to be as a man now. This is what I'm expected to be as a student. This is what I'm expected to be as a Christian. This is what I'm expected to be as a Democrat, a Republican, an American, somebody from California. And all the things that we assimilate as definitions individuate us and continue to distinguish us from the world outside of ourselves, removing our capacity to be present and merely satiating the needs of a confused mind, confused by listening to the broken record of the voice within our imagination, the ruminating voice that compels us to continue to seek understanding and knowledge, understandings that merely become more beliefs, more imprisonment, that at the highest levels of being would just be a person that experiences themselves as nothing and everything. Because if I had no definition for who and what I am, and I merely just experience existing, then I would have no inherent limitations on my imagination and my view of what's possible. That the only thing that would guide me would be choice, or who I say that I am. I would be free to create myself in language, once again, something inspiring and empowering, something that makes a difference, something that isn't merely in servitude of its own sufferings. That what if everything that you believe to be true about you is nothing but a belief? That believing it is the only thing that makes it so, and it's something you said. That what if you're a human being, and that is all that you would need to ever know about yourself, and the rest would just be experience in whatever you want and whatever you create, that you wouldn't need to have certainty around what you are, because you would realize that you're quite limitless. That it's your knowing and your understanding of yourself that has separated you from the moment you live within, puts you into the purgatory and solitary confinement of your ruminating mind, and has you strategize life in avoidance of pain, suffering, failure, judgment, ridicule, looking bad, being dominated, being controlled, being manipulated, and all of the things you do in your mind are dissociating you from reality. And the profound power of your mind has the capacity to discern and understand everything just through experience, and it automatically adjusts to new experiences. That there's something powerful that happens when people just pursue things because they like them. They learn automatically. They don't need flashcards or Google. They don't need Wikipedia. How would somebody invent calculus without the internet? How did we come to understand electrons? You see, in today's society, we have indoctrinated people to assimilate knowledge without having to understand it, simply to be able to recreate it for the purpose of testing. That people, if they run out of knowledge that they adopted this way, they won't have the ability to answer questions anymore, because they can't think. Because thinking is from nothing and generative. Thinking exists within the domain of experience. That people that actually think have spontaneous ideations that come to them, like revelations, that they don't necessarily take authorship of, only because they're not ideas or beliefs that are adopted in servitude of identity. That today, if you talk to somebody, their identity is going to nearly dictate everything that they believe. That they choose to believe things in servitude of the maintenance of an identity. And that becomes the basis of all profound human conflict. That human conflict is a fear-based attachment to reality by people who have a fear of a world they don't understand and are dissociated and disconnected from. And the more definition we incorporate into our own experience of self, the less relatable that we are able to be. That you listen to people talk about other people, their identity mandates projecting onto other people, stereotyping other people, simplifying other people into something they could understand, merely understand based on what someone has told them already about those people, and able to think objectively, unable to listen to other people without negating other people. We invalidate and negate other people to protect ourselves from the intrusion of alternate views of reality that would then create internal conflict within the reality that we have attached ourselves within. And that's the basis of debate. That's the basis of arguing. It's the basis of misinformation and confusion. It's the basis of total indoctrination within religious organizations, societies, that having people incapable of thinking is, a profound tool and instrument of social engineering. It's why do you think that they have to assassinate people that think? Because it's disruptive and it's scary. That people cling to reality out of fear. And the reality is just structured in their beliefs. Not something they ascertain naturally, not something that they observed and learned on their own, something they assimilated, something they conformed to, something they adopted, something they chose. And they choose to believe things, and then their mind is closed. That all the things you believe about yourself and believe to be true are the very basis of your solitary confinement and intellectual isolation. That understanding is different than believing. You want to be able to understand everybody, but not understand them from your point of view, understand them from theirs. You want to be able to understand them in a profound and powerful way that would automatically accept them. Because all you're accepting is the world they live within. All you're doing is understanding why they see the things that they do. And that is only a threat because you are afraid. You are attached. That your beliefs are in servitude of an identity that protects yourself. And that's it. And so you can't listen to anybody because alternate ideas, thoughts, and beliefs don't align with yours. You get defensive, you get negating, you get reactive. You avoid domination, you avoid being controlled, and they do the same thing. We call that a conversation. You need a therapist to referee your capacity to discuss things with people because you think you know them. You believe things about them. They believe things about you. You believe things about yourself. You believe things about the world, and so do they. And you're attached. And so therefore you can't listen. The only thing you can do is listen to the voice, invalidate, judge, critique, finish sentences, understand what they meant. And you're listening for meaning. You're listening for what triggers you. You're listening for, are they accusing me? You're listening for, am I good enough? Am I broken? Are they right? Are they wrong? Is there something wrong with them? Is there something wrong with me? And you're doing all of that while you're sitting there. Oh, I'm listening to you. Yeah, no, I'm listening to what you're saying. I know what you meant by that. Oh, you know what they meant by that? Oh, do you now? Well, because you compared it to your past. You compared it to a pattern because it triggered you. And now you're projecting your father onto someone. And now you perceive them as a threat. Oh, now you're starting to feel guilt. You're feeling guilt because they're saying things about you that make you feel not good enough. They're not good enough that you hide and pretend isn't there. As you live your life as a veneer, you live your life as a perfectionist, you live your life being strong, being independent, being funny. All these ways that you invented as compensations for the truth that you know you're not good enough and broken, or you know that there's something wrong with you. And these knowings are the very foundational basis of the entire experience of your reality. A relationship to yourself and a relationship between you and the world that you perceive and project out to there. containing you within the profound boundaries of the limitations of those very thoughts, preventing your self-expression, your freedom, your power, suffocating you, making you small, and then you project your smallness and make it someone else's fault and forfeit your power. You give the narcissist the power. They controlled me. They lied to me. Oh no, it wasn't your ruminating understanding and confusion you created that enabled them to tell you something that you wanted to believe to maintain the idealization of them because you've objectified them as a source of validation. That you look at everything in life in terms of its relevance in defining you to yourself. Living on a yo-yo between good enough and not good enough, broken and healed. Something's wrong with me. Oh no, I got an answer. I got a diagnosis. I got my love language. I figured out what I was doing wrong, and now I'm going to change myself to make my boyfriend happy. Then he won't need to cheat. He said I wasn't meeting his needs, which meant I wasn't good enough for him. And I know I want to be good enough, so I'm going to try to be perfect. Well, that's the stuckness of humanity. And then when you talk about narcissists, there's somebody that didn't even go through the personality development. They exist entirely stuck as false selves, where they have severed themselves from their own conscious mind, the realm of possibility, merely living through the ruminating mind. They only exist as that voice. You see, a regular person has both. They have God that they can create from nothing, and then they have the thing that inhibits them. They have the thing that stops them from being able to create. The voice of reason and doubt, the voice of rationality, the voice of knowledge, the voice of knowing, the voice that's within their mind, translating reality all the time. It's where we go, we think there, we think we're thinking. When the truth is, without the intervention of the voice, your capacity for navigating reality would be profound and expansive. And you would be able to create knowledge through your own experiences, but you can't because you've been disconnected from your own experiences. We have to call it the third eye. The third eye. That's just your mind's eye. That's just your imagination. That's just the living, working model of reality, of the experience of life. That was invented as a function of the brain to give us an evolutionary advantage where we could predict the future. It made us like psychics. Why? Because through experience and through the trillions of cells, our mind from nothing could create plausible potential outcomes, that we would understand how to herd animals, that we would create strategies and tools, that we could invent. We could literally have spontaneous ideas spring to life, guided by distinguishing things in our known world. We can use the imaginary inner virtual reality world to create, to visualize. That the people that made DNA, the lady that had discovered it, she imagined it first. Now, that doesn't mean she created it in reality. It just means that that's how we're creating the likeness of God, is that we can create from nothing within our mind. And so she tried to understand and explain the organizing principle of life and genetics through understanding of biochemistry and knowing the molecules and structures. She was able to invent a molecule, the double helix of DNA in her mind, later to be verified with microscopes before you could even see it. Atoms, electrons, molecules that people thought these things in their mind. They didn't see an electron. You can't even see an atom. But these are subatomic particles that you would not be able to observe with the most powerful instrumentation. And we would understand it anyway. That to try to explain how the chemistry works, we had to continue to use our imagination. And then to be able to verify it and reality test it, that's the immense gift of the mind. And so, you see, your genius has been severed from you. The working model of your mind. When I talk to people, 99% of people do not think. They think that they think and they're ruminating. They're not inventing anything new. They just have knowledge circulating around, a traumatic emotional experience, reverberating notions of self. Something's wrong with me, something's wrong with me, something's wrong with me, intermixed with flashes of reality. And they can only invent a future given by the past, within the confines of whatever behavior, lacking discernment. The feeling not good enough defines their relationship to someone else. That here's someone that's being a narcissist, emotionally abusing them, and because it triggers, I'm not good enough, their relationship is he's mad because of me. It's my fault. Just like when the dad got mad when you spilled your Cheerios. And that's it. And that's all you need to know about narcissists and empaths. The truth is that the empathy of people pleasers is also false. Because it's part of a lack of discernment. It's projecting yourself onto another person and imbuing them with your feelings if you are in their situation. Real empathy exists as alive and real in the moment. It's when your senses are trained externally, you're not attentive to yourself. Yourself has no invested interest in the moment. All you are is just experiencing the moment. And so you can feel and sense the experiences of others, and it becomes something that enables you to understand them in a very clear and accurate way. And that's today's talk.